Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. This episode of Slam the Gavel is sponsored by CPS Protect Consulting Services. A child protective services case is one of the most frightening experiences for any parent. Don't face it alone. Face it with confidence with Urgent Assist by CPS Protect. You can have access to former CPS investigators to make sure you preserve your rights and protect your family. If you're facing CPS involvement and aren't sure where to turn, their child welfare consultants can help you. Visit cpsprotect.com/subscribe and enter the coupon code Slam the Gavel for 60% off your first year of Urgent Assist. And this is available in all 50 states. I have another announcement. Bradley's mother, Narcisse Golan, passed away in the fall of 2022. Bradley is autistic and needs structured routine and therapies he receives for his autism 6 days a week. However, Italy just entrusted Bradley to the Italian Social Services. If he is ruled to go back, he will then face the next 3 to 4 years in the Italian foster care system, where he can't speak or understand the language. He will then be taken away from the only family he has ever known. Please call Governor Hochul, New York State, 518-474-8390. That's Governor Hochul, 518-474-8390 to please keep Bradley here safe in these United States. Hashtag keep Bradley safe. Another announcement, go to the site pleasedoyourjob.com. We need 2,700 more signatures to get a case reopened. That's pleasedoyourjob.com. Also, the last announcement, you are all invited to the conference with Child Custody Coalition Custodial Interference Press Conference on October 31st, 2023 at 10:30 a.m. at the PA State Capitol, Harrisburg, PA, in the main rotunda stairs. And that is for the Custody Coalition of Custodial Interference Press Conference on October 31st. And I've got a brand new guest on. I'm happy to have Melissa Vagle on. She is a mom with 3 kids. She has served in the Army National Guard for almost 6 years, and she met her second husband while she was a soldier. She met him when she was 22 years old. She was married for almost 20 years on paper, and she went through a grueling 3-year divorce with the same judge presiding over it. She had to rethink her future after her mother died in August 2019, and she decided to file for divorce. Then she had a new outlook on her life. She decided she wanted to learn more about the system so she could help others with their cases. She therefore became a notary public and a certified paralegal with the goal to be an advocate in these areas. 2 of her children have special needs, and she also has another child with mental health issues. And going through her long divorce and now separation abuse has shown her so much. And she's also been a homeschooling mom for 11 years, which has forced her to become very, very good at researching. Her personal experience in having to deal with abuse has afforded her the opportunity to help strangers that have now become friends during her journey that we call life and divorce and loss, while enduring it as well. And she knows firsthand how abuse feels. And I welcome you, Melissa Vagle, to Slam the Gavel. How did you decide to become a paralegal? Because I know a lot of people think about this. I've thought about it. How did you come across actually wanting to do it?
Well, it's Melissa Vagle, which is totally fine. Everybody gets it. Um, it's mostly I had like a gut feeling as I was going through my divorce, and I had to represent myself in the court setting for the last 8 months. And now moving forward, in my opinion, I believe I married a covert narcissist. And so it's very difficult to navigate this type of system if you are not educated in certain areas. And this was just something that I felt like was on my heart and part of my journey. And I feel like with my own journey, I feel like there were so many other people that were going through the same thing or starting or continuing, or it's ongoing, really.
Mhm.
The divorce just doesn't end with a divorce. I mean, when you're married to somebody that was abusive in the marriage, the abuse doesn't stop just because you got divorced. And unfortunately, with these courts the way they are right now, also in my opinion, my experience and opinion, I feel like the court system is set up for this type of stuff, where it's not set up to protect women. It's not set up to protect children. It's not set up to protect men if it's the other way around, if it's the
Mhm.
woman being abusive. Because I know that, it doesn't pick a gender. It
Right.
just either one. It could be a man or a woman.
Yeah.
And I've met both. I've met both with different friends I've made along the way. Um, I used to be in a coalition, and we had men and women in the coalition, and I'm so thankful that I did join that, because I met some, I feel like, lifelong friends now um, through that process. And it doesn't matter where you live, is what I've noticed. It doesn't matter if you live in Florida, it doesn't matter if you live in Maine, if you live in Alaska, it really doesn't matter. Even the UK, it does not matter, because abuse is abuse. And I became a paralegal just to learn the law so that I could help others, not necessarily to work for someone else, but to just kind of learn the language that they use, also called legalese.
Uh-huh.
Um, so unless you understand what they're doing and how they're using it, it's hard to know how to um, show um, others on what to do and how to succeed if you're still in the trenches yourself, because it sure feels like a foxhole. I'm not even gonna lie. I mean, it is a battle. It literally is a battle. I feel like it's a battle, and sometimes it feels like you're still in the war. And so we do get wounds along the way. And like I said, it's been such a pleasure to be able to not only be on your show, but also be able to share my story um, in the hopes to help somebody else or educate somebody else. You're not nuts. That's what I've learned.
Mhm.
When you do the studying and you do educate yourself on all the red flags and everything that's connected with financial abuse,
Mhm.
coercive control, anything to do with dealing with a covert narcissist, things like this, and how the courts are not set up to protect.
Mhm.
They're definitely not. They're courts of equity, and they are not courts of protection. That's what I've learned throughout my divorce that took just about 3 years. It was 2 months shy of 3 years. And I've just learned that um, the person I thought I was married to was not the person I was divorcing. It was way
Mhm.
worse, way worse. And just when you think it couldn't get any worse, that's when it gets worse.
That's very
So
true.
it literally is, it's a different kind of monster. I don't know how else to explain it. He was having an affair. I don't even know how many affairs he had. I just know that there was one for sure. And he ended up marrying her. And they met at work. And so that was very painful, because during my divorce, I had offered for him to get counseling and to self reflect.
Mhm.
And my mom had died. And so emotionally, I was not in a good place. He showed me zero empathy. He said she deserved it. And so I just thought to myself, I can't be with this person that can't even give me empathy. This is the last parent I have. My father had passed away when I was 11 in 1989. He was on a motorcycle and was hit by a car, and he ultimately died, went into a coma and died. And so I only had one parent left. I had my mother. And so for him to say that about my mother, and his story was, tragic as well, but it didn't feel like he had changed anything about his life. His father and his brother both committed suicide. And during our almost 20-year marriage, I gave him the most support I could possibly give him. And it was very disheartening to understand that these type of people, they lack empathy. They lack the skills to give love and receive love. It just, out of all my research that I was doing, because I thought, my gosh, what is wrong with me? Like, what did I do wrong? How can I make myself better, so that I don't carry this forward? And what I learned was, um, not everybody is able to give compassion. Not everybody is able to discern emotional intelligence. And I feel like in my process of learning what I went through in my divorce, in my marriage, that um, I thought, what am I teaching my kids?
Mhm.
What am I teaching my kids? And I brought them into this world and it asked to be born. So I feel like I carried them in my uterus. So I felt like, as a parent, I needed to at least be on the front lines of that decision making. And the decision making at the end of the day was, can I be with this person for the rest of my life? And I learned with my mom ultimately dying, I just thought, I can't be with this person. He makes me feel like I'm nothing. He made me feel like I was total garbage. He made me feel like nothing I did was ever good enough. Everything was always my fault. And by everything, I mean everything.
Mhm.
I mean, piece of
Mhm.
just toe, it was my fault somehow. I mean,
Same.
it was literally everything was my fault. And I just thought, how can nothing be his fault? That doesn't make sense. No one's perfect except for Jesus.
Right.
I mean, honestly. And I certainly never said I was a Jesus. I
No.
didn't think he was either. But at the same time, I'm like, how in the world is it possible to never be a blame for anything? You know? So he was basically a man child that could keep a job, but a monkey could do his job. He works at the post office.
Mhm.
So I mean, I don't know if it'll go automated at some point. I don't know.
Mhm.
But he was working for the post office, and I supported him so that he didn't really move up the ladder. He's still a mail carrier. But in the event that he would, I would have backed him up. Um, but that's not what he was looking for. He was looking for somebody to control. He was
Mm.
looking for somebody to love him back, but not give love, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
It was literally just like a checklist. And when I went through all the red flags and when I did the studying, I thought, oh my gosh, because I did go into therapy during my divorce because I felt so broken from my mom dying
Mm.
and learning the fact that he told our daughter that grandma deserved it. And I just thought that's so horrible because I never said a mean thing about any of his family members because I think death's death. And I feel like it's so final. And why would you speak ill of the dead?
Oh
You
my
know,
goodness.
they can't speak for themselves, you know? And so that was my wake up call. Um, Besides just some other things that had happened when my mom was sick and in the hospital. So I was put in a role because I'm the oldest daughter with my mom. I was put in the role of decision making because my mom didn't have a will.
Mhm.
And so that was a different eye opener. And and I learned that he just tried to use the system however he could. So he asked for me to get like a note from hospice and things like this, and so that he could use vacation time or family support type of vacation for himself so that he could stay at home. But in reality, he was just looking for time off so that he could be paid to stay at home, and it was not to be in a supportive role necessarily. Um he he didn't have like any type of supper ready for me or anything like that. It was literally just taking care of our, at that time he was, let's see, 16, 17, 18, 3 years old. Our son, he's now 7. So
Mhm.
our kids are now 20, 17, and 7.
Mm.
um and I mean, the oldest being a boy, the youngest being a boy, and the middle one's a girl. And The two oldest, they just um, had such a struggle with the divorce in itself because they wanted the abuse to stop as well. And I felt so guilty. I had to forgive myself because I can't go in the past. I can't redo the past.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, there is not a time machine that I know of. Um,
Yep.
so I can only self-reflect and try to do better and to teach my kids self-worth and to teach my kids that they do matter and that one person cannot be the opinion for the rest of your life. Whatever they say doesn't have to be the opinion that they have to have about themselves for the rest of their life.
Mhm.
Um, uh, During my process of the self-reflection, that's when I joined that coalition and I met other women, some men, mostly women,
Mhm.
um, that had been through something similar or worse than me. And um, I'm just so very thankful because I know that everything is a lesson and I'm going to take it just as that. I feel like I'm not going to say poor me. I'm not going to say, that, I mean, sure, it sucked. But at the end of the day, I didn't have like the scars like some people may have, like, physical scars and such. I do have the emotional scars, but I do believe in God, and I do believe that if you do give your burdens to Him, that I do believe that you can move forward in your life. You have to let those things go, and it's not worth holding on to, but it doesn't mean you can't take the lesson that you were given and to be able to teach others or to educate others. So that was like my whole goal, not for myself, but I feel like it was like a gut instinct or something like that because I thought, oh my gosh, God, why am I going through all of this?
Mhm.
And it just felt like just rocks falling on top of me, with my mom dying and then starting a divorce and then the financial abuse just continued. He took our 5 bank accounts and emptied every single one,
Oh.
and he was getting into every single account of mine. So I had to open other accounts, bank accounts and email accounts. And then I found out that he was using the Find My iPhone as a tracking for our kids and myself. I didn't even think about it. I was distraught because I was dealing with my mom's loss
Mhm.
and the loss of my mom, rather. And our daughter is the one that pointed it out. She just said, "Do you know that dad is tracking us?" And I said, "What?" And
Mm.
she's like, "Yeah, Find My iPhone. Yeah, he was looking at it and stuff like this." And I was just like, "What?" And so my eyes were open in a different kind of way because I just never even thought to even think about that. I mean, one red flag that I can say that people should be aware of during financial abuse is that when your spouse, boyfriend, fiance, significant other, we'll just say, wants you to prove where you went with a receipt.
Mhm.
I did find out that that's not normal. I just thought it was just something that, husbands wanted. And I learned, of course, after the fact, that that is not quote unquote normal. And it's very disturbing to know that I normalized it by not thinking that there's anything wrong with it. It was disturbing in the moment, but then when you go through years and years and years of it, it just becomes routine. You
Mhm.
become like a robot. Um, and so it's very hard to save money. It's very hard to have self-care. I learned during my long marriage. And so, for example, if I wanted to go get a massage for myself, he would complain incessantly about it. He would complain about the money. He would complain about just me being gone. I mean, anything just that I would do for myself was wrong. And I also learned that that's not normal either.
Mhm. Mhm.
That a good, healthy, loving relationship would want you to have self care and to be able to feel like you're being loved and cared for in a way that is helpful. I wasn't off doing drugs or anything like that. I literally just would go get a massage and that's it. And I'd come right home. So um, those are, you know, small red flags that I felt like were that stuck out to me. Another one is like the small little criticisms when you're dating.
Mm-hmm.
Those are big major things because they'll only get worse. I'd never dated somebody that was so critical. I guess I normalized it because I feel like my mom um, was that way. And so it was maybe a little bit normalized for me
Mm-hmm.
to just continue the relationship. And I just didn't want to get a divorce. Like that was like not something I ever thought about, literally until my mom died.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought, oh my gosh, it'll be either him or me, whoever dies first. Like literally, I'm going to take this to the end. That was my thought process. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just very disturbing because I feel like your spirit is what needs to be protected.
Mm-hmm.
Your spirit and your heart, because I feel like there are certain daggers that are emotional and physical and psychological that can carry those scars to the next generation if it's not taken care of. And so, um, with the self reflecting, um, in my own experience, I would say that um, having girlfriends is important,
Mm-hmm.
and having close friendships, especially with people that have been through this awful journey, but then it becomes, a wonderful journey at the same time because there are people out there that have been through what you've been through. And until you talk about it, you won't know. There's so many hidden secrets out there that people just don't share. And I certainly didn't share it.
Mm-mm.
I mean, my family was like, oh my gosh, Melissa is getting a divorce. Well, there's lots of ways that we pretend. We pretend with the pictures, we pretend with family functions because I was very private. I didn't tell people my business. I was brought up to keep that private.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, this is so important. You said everything. This is like everything people need to know, like criticisms when dating.
Yes.
I didn't realize it either. You normalize stuff like people planning a wedding. I
Mm-hmm.
noticed that, he would be snapping at me more.
Mm-hmm.
But then you make excuses. Well, it's wedding jitters. It's,
Yeah.
no, it shouldn't be. It should be flowing smoothly. You're getting married to
Mm-hmm.
someone. They shouldn't be on you about stuff. This is stuff young people need to know, men and women.
Yeah. Another thing is that I got pregnant 2 months into being married.
Mm.
And so I had no idea that going off birth control that I was a fertile person. I
Yeah.
just had no idea. I'd never been pregnant before.
Mm.
And so when that happened, then the abuse got worse.
Mm.
The abuse got worse when I was pregnant. And I just thought this is supposed to be a very special, happy time,
Mhm.
you know? But to these men, they think, or women, but
Mhm.
my case was a man. Um, I feel like he treated me badly because he wasn't priority. Because now I had a living being growing inside of me,
Mhm.
and I think that they are a little bit jealous. If you want
Mhm.
to know the truth,
Mhm.
because they didn't get to experience any of that. I mean, he would complain to me about me drinking milk, for
Mhm.
instance, while being pregnant.
Ah.
And unfortunately, I was one of those women that um, if I had a craving, I tried to eat that craving. So if it was chicken nuggets, then I ate chicken nuggets. If it was ramen noodles, I ate ramen noodles. But it wasn't like it was a daily thing. Um, and I feel like when you see those movies and they say, "Oh, she's gonna eat chicken and ice cream," and it's just like, well, my now ex, um, he would make me go get it myself.
Ah.
He would not. he would not cater to any type of craving, let's just say.
Oh,
So if I was craving orange pop, I would have to go get it myself. And so that was another red flag for me. Now thinking back,
I'm so
and
sorry.
I mean, this was my first pregnancy, my first,
Mm,
situation with, being pregnant and newly married and things like that, and so it was very emotionally damaging. I feel like when you're a new mother. Then I decided to breastfeed. And again, the abuse didn't get any easier. I
mm,
mean, because then it was just like, well, I don't get to help in any sort of way because you're breastfeeding. It's like, well, can't you be thankful that I'm putting my own things aside because certain foods you can't eat, certain things you shouldn't drink, things like
mhm,
this. Medicines, the whole 9 yards, because it's almost like being pregnant again, where
mhm.
you literally have to watch what you eat and drink,
Yep.
and intake. And instead of being thankful for it, he just made me feel guilty. He made me feel guilty that, he was getting time taken away from him, giving him a bottle or something like that. So it just literally felt like I couldn't ever do anything right.
Oh,
I mean, if I gained weight, I wasn't thin enough. If I was eating cookies, then I would hear about it because he's like, "Aren't you on a diet?" And I'm just like, well, sometimes there's things in moderation. Like I'm not even a sweet kind of
mhm,
eater person. But certain times of the month can taste better.
mhm.
Not gonna lie,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and hormones play into that too. And like with my first one, I ballooned up to like I think it was almost like 160 some pounds. And it actually took me 9 months to lose all that.
Mm-hmm.
And y- you need emotional support when you're going through all of this. And I'm so sorry you were so neglected.
Yeah, I literally had no idea because I'd never been pregnant before. My first marriage, I was married to a soldier and he was deployed the first year. And I didn't realize how attached I was to spending time, like the physical part of spending time with somebody that you love. And that part was very difficult.
Mhm.
So on paper, we were married for 2.5 years, but I thought I saw him 3 days,
Oh.
because he was constantly being deployed.
Mhm.
So I was not able to have any type of marriage. And so I promised myself that the next time that I wouldn't do that and I would fight harder for my marriage. And I did. But then this is what happened.
Mhm.
My grandma was dying from bone cancer,
Mm.
and it was breast cancer that went into her bones. And so I thought, well, I'll do two birds, one stone, as the saying goes. So I went to college and I met my now ex. And another red flag that I want people to know about is that because he was a mailman,
Mhm.
he knew exactly what I drove, where I lived, and what kind of mail I got. He already knew my name. And so before I met him, he already knew who I was. He just didn't know what I looked like. And so when I had National Guard plates on my car, he found me at the armory. And so looking back now, I'm like, oh my gosh, he stalked me from day one. I just didn't even realize. I just didn't even realize. And because I didn't know who he was, because I was new to the smaller town, it's like 8,000 people at that time. Thief River Falls in Minnesota, very close to Canada.
Mhm.
It's, um, they're known for their Arctic Cat, and they have other bigger businesses that are there, and like DigiKey. Um, and I feel like that was another red flag for me that I just didn't even think about until like way later because I thought, oh my gosh, it's kind of cool, kind of sexy, and then I'm like, no, it's not. It's really not sexy. It's really not cool either, because he found me at the armory,
Mm.
and he literally tried very hard. And then after I got pregnant, he wanted me to get out of the Army National Guard because he didn't want me to be around men. He didn't
Mm.
want me to work. He didn't want me to work around men. And when I did work, I was a hairdresser. Excuse me. When I was a hairdresser, he took my whole paycheck and made me pay for lots of bills, and I'd get 20 bucks.
Dang.
Yep. Made me pay for daycare and one other bill. And that pretty much was my check. And so that was another red flag for me, was the financial abuse, starting early on, and how he encouraged me to put our money together, pool our money together.
Mhm.
And so that would be another piece of advice, is even when you get married, have separate accounts.
Exactly.
Always,
Yes.
always have separate accounts. And it's not saying that you can't pay things together. It's just saying that there should be transparency. He would take cash out of my purse, not even tell me. He would make big, big purchases and wouldn't even talk to me about it. But yet, if I had done the same thing to him, oh, no, 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 I would hear about it forever, which I never did. But I'm just saying
Yep.
that if I did, he could buy, $20,000 vehicle and not bat an eyelash. But he didn't have to check with me because he was the provider. I shouldn't need to ask any type of questions. And
Wow.
so during our marriage, he started saying that he had listened enough. He didn't want to hear anymore. He would tell me to be quiet. He wouldn't tell me to shut up, but he'd tell me to be quiet, or he'd walk away while I was talking.
Uh,
So, I mean, if that doesn't make you feel like you don't matter, I mean, you know,
it's a power play when people walk away when you're talking.
mm, yeah,
And that's a form of coercive control.
yeah. Just like text messages, they always have to have the last word.
Oh, yes. Well, that's a personality disorder thing too. They have to have the last word. It's
Mm-hmm.
like it's like they're little mini attorneys. They have to have the last
Yeah,
word.
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
this is so eye-opening that the things that you're saying are almost mirroring my things.
Mm,
I'm sure they're mirroring other people's things as well as you're talking. This is
yeah,
things everybody needs to know.
yeah. Another thing that I did learn with my research process, was that, speaking of mirroring, they do mirror your behavior. So they watch you a lot. They say all the things that you want to hear, and I believe it's called love bombing.
Hmm.
Love bombing right in the beginning. So how I was love bombed was, I was going to college, and so I really didn't have a lot of money. I worked for the VFW because that was the only place that was open late
Right.
in my small little town. And then I didn't have to deal with bar fights and things like that. It was,
Yeah.
older people and bingo.
Right.
So it was pretty easy, and I enjoyed it. The people were awesome to work with. And then I started working for the college. I did work study. So what I learned with that mirroring is that if you kiss them, then they kiss you back. If you want to hold hands, then they'll hold your hand back. But it wasn't something that was self-initiated on their part. And so I feel like they would mirror your behavior on what you wanted. And then as time goes on, they take away that affection. They take away all those things that you thought you fell in love with, like this person that was buying you gifts, for instance.
Hmm.
Another thing is, I'm not a super big seafood person, but I do enjoy it.
Hmm.
Um, and so he would drive me an hour to go to Red Lobster, and he doesn't like seafood. I had no idea. I had no idea that it was going to be like that. So then it just became like, okay, Mother's Day or my birthday. That'd be the only time that we would go, get something special like that. That would be something he'd enjoy, because then it became about him and what he enjoyed. Unless it was my birthday or Mother's Day. So I had two choices a year. Otherwise it was about him.
Hmm.
What did he want? And I think they do enjoy that. Another thing was, when I was cooking, I feel like I'm not a sous chef, but I'm pretty close. Um, I feel like things that you're good at, they feel like they're different little poking of the holes that they do. So if there's something they can criticize, like, okay, well, there's something they didn't like, for instance, to eat, then he would say, don't make that again.
Mm.
And I'm not talking about burning meals. I'm talking about like it would be spectacular, but it would just wasn't his personal preference. So he would give me little digs, and that was like one of my passions in life was to, just like being a mother, was to cook for others and to, because I can cook and bake. But if you ask me to sew, bare minimum.
Mhm.
Um, so that was, that was my wheelhouse, was in the cooking area. And so that was another red flag for me, was that whatever your passion is, I feel like that's where they will find fault. They will
Mhm.
try to find some type of fault in whatever passion it is. So another passion of mine was reading books. I love reading books. I love getting information. I love escaping, into a book. And so then he'd make me feel guilty about reading a book because, oh, the house wasn't immaculate, or
Mhm.
why am I taking time for myself to read a book? Things
How
like
dare
this.
you?
I know. I'm just like, I don't get this. I just thought for the longest time, I thought, my gosh, I'm really married to a crappy person. you know?
Isn't
And
that
then I
the
find out that it's not really that. It's really a bigger picture. I was like, oh my gosh.
oh. Well, I remember I was feeding my second one, and my ex, well, he was going to be my ex, he looked at me and
Mhm.
said, "Why isn't the house clean?"
Mm.
It's like I'm feeding a baby here. It's like I'm taking care of several, bunch of kids, and I'm trying to get everybody fed.
Yeah.
I'll get to the house tomorrow.
Yeah.
So what I did was I thought, well, let's teach him a lesson. Let's hire a housekeeper. So I hired a cleaning service, and they came, we'll say every other week because they were expensive. I didn't want to push it.
Mhm.
So I did that. And then, he learned that that didn't, don't criticize me anymore. And then I let the cleaning service go. But I had to make the point that this is what the help that I need, that no one else is helping me with. So I'm going to hire someone. And now you know what this entails. He never complained again.
Nice. Yeah, well, I got a piece of advice from a gal
Mhm.
years ago. I used to sell Mary Kay, and this friend of mine, she had told me about her abusive marriage, and she had told me about how her husband would say, this or that or whatever for the groceries, the grocery bill. That was like our constant thing, was that in the temperature of the house. I don't know why.
Mm,
I don't know why. Like he would always say, why is the temperature up? Or why is this and why is that? It was always about the temperature.
mm.
I mean, you would have thought that we paid $5,000 for like electricity because the way he freaked out on me about the temperature. I mean, it was just dumb, dumb, dumb.
Yeah.
So that and the grocery bill, like those are two things that just constant conversations about, you know, how can we cut this bill or how can we cut that bill, and blah 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 blah. And so I learned from this friend of mine. She said that she would make these meals for herself while she was at home, and extravagant, let's just say, wink wink.
Mm,
And then when he would come home, she would make noodles and butter or eggs and toast. And after about 3 4 meals of that, he said, well, what's for dinner? She's like, noodles and butter.
mhm,
And then he'd say, well, what's for dinner? Eggs and toast.
mhm,
And so she said after 3 4 meals of that, he was just like, okay, what's going on here? She's like, well, you said you wanted not, you know, a high grocery bill. This is what's cheap:
mhm,
noodles and butter, eggs and toast.
mhm.
And so she said he quit complaining about that. And I tried to do that. I tried that strategy,
Mm.
but I couldn't take it. I was like, oh my gosh, I just, oh, so I failed in that area. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
it's
And
like
then I started
you try the reverse psychology, and sometimes it'll
mhm,
work, sometimes it just
doing
won't.
their own medicine. Yeah. And then towards the end of the marriage, I started sticking up for myself. And I had to just learned that advocating for myself is not what they want.
Uh-uh.
They once they know that they can't control you anymore. I literally looked at him in the face. This was after my mom had died, I'm pretty sure.
Oh.
Um, that I said, the control is over.
Hmm.
And I said that, I have a brain, I have a mind, and I do have feelings. And he put in his own affidavit for court. It was so funny. His own affidavit for court on reasons why the marriage didn't work. He said that he didn't help with dishes or laundry. And I thought, no marriage is about dishes and laundry. It's part of it,
Uh-huh.
but the abuse is the nail in the coffin, so to speak. It's the needle in a haystack of many things. All those little small things, they add up to lots of things. And it's never just dishes and laundry. I mean, that's the silliest.
Oh my
Dishes and
gosh.
laundry. I mean, can you imagine how many divorces there would be if it was about dishes and laundry? I'm just saying. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Why submit an affidavit like that? What that's like totally frivolous.
oh yeah. But I mean, it just literally just was his thought process. I mean, he lacks emotional intelligence, and he lacks the intelligence to know that, you know, um, when other people need compassion, you know, that instead of pretending, you should actually feel those emotions. And I know that those are types of people that they just don't go there. They
Hmm.
just don't go there. They don't go there. They don't feel. They don't feel like how we feel. And when they cry, they're fake crying.
Yes. And there
I mean, he
that's
literally got on his knees and said, "Please don't leave me,"
mhm.
while he was having an affair. It makes no sense.
You can't have it both ways. And
I know, and I said, I can't be the other woman. I'm the wife.
mhm.
I did say those words. Um, and then he moved in with her during our divorce, and so it was. I mean, these home wreckers. I mean, she was married too. And then it ended up being that she has the same judge as us, which I think is bogus.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, um, but at the end of the day, I just feel like, I certainly couldn't change him. He couldn't change for us. He couldn't change for me. He couldn't change for himself. So it's much easier for himself just to keep pretending.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, sure, my marriage, went down the toilet, but at the end of the day, there was a ton of lessons and self-reflection that needed to happen. And like I said, lifelong friends that I've made. And I hope I can add you to my list because I think you're such an
Definitely.
awesome person.
Thank you. Thank you. We have so much in common after hearing your story.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's how was he raised? Do you know his history? Like, did you talk about like before you got married, did you find out what his history was, how he was raised?
Well, what he told me is that his dad had a drinking problem early on when he was younger, and and it was confirmed when I was with him and things like that because he said he couldn't just have one drink, and so he struggled with
Mm.
that type of addiction. And his mother is very controlling.
Mm.
His mother is very um, I may even be able to put her in a narcissistic category because I feel like she was in our marriage so much it was definitely not helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried very like not in a mean way, but I try to say as a wife, like, that's not your mom's business.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't need to know that information. And so, like, if I had a job, for instance, and I was working, his mother would want to know where it was, how much money I was making. That's not her business.
Uh-uh.
We didn't ask for money from them, and then they told him to keep a secret, is what he told me, because he borrowed money from them one time, and we did pay them back. It's just that there was always strings attached, and I felt like that's kind of where he learned it. was that there was always strings attached with a gift or any type of emotional anything. So, I'll give you this if you give me that. And
Mhm.
so it was always like a compromise, but it was always where, it's better for him. I'll give an example. So with our older son, that's now 20, he had a cat and his name was Audie. We brought him back from Arizona. We live in Minnesota now, but we got him in Arizona, and a very unique cat. And when we brought him back with us, um, our son became attached to him, and they just loved each other. And so when we moved, we felt like we were being forced to sell our home. So I didn't feel like I could afford the home as it was because it was in the country, and so it had a septic and it had a well.
Mhm.
And since he depleted our money in the bank, I thought, oh my gosh, if something were to happen, I certainly couldn't replace it. So um, he and I had to sell the house, and so the kids and I lived in hotels for 2.5 months. He gave me zero support, financial support. He wanted me to bring the kids to him. He met me a few times, but not very often. But he wanted me to cater to his needs
Mhm.
and to, provide the clothing and to provide, obviously the shelter.
Oh.
um, and he was living in a one-bedroom apartment. Okay, we have 3 kids.
Mhm.
So our 2 teenagers were forced to sleep next to each other in the living room. And so that was very difficult for them as well.
Mhm.
Um, and then he didn't do anything fun with them at all. He didn't take them any place. So it's just, let's go sit at the apartment, or he would
Oh.
take them swimming or something because that was at his apartment. It wasn't something extra, if that makes sense.
Right.
He was very cognizant on like how much money he was spending. But yet, the lawyer and stuff like that he hired, didn't matter as long as it didn't go to me. I think that was his whole goal.
Mhm.
Um, so the example is that our son had this cat, and he had taken the cat for us. And then we had 2 little kittens that my sister had taken until we could get into the home that we're now in, that
Mhm.
we've been in for 3 years. So during that process, he not only had the cat, but he told our son that if he could come over every day and see his dad, meaning our son, then he would keep the cat for him.
Mhm.
Then the next thing he told him, kind of after the fact, was that he gave him to a coworker, gave his cat to a coworker. And then he said, well, if you come with me, we'll go visit him. And he could see that his cat was just distraught. And our son was distraught. Just that his dad had not kept his wishes about, keeping him safe, somebody, not a stranger, things like this. And we eventually got the cat back. But then another thing had happened with that cat. He had ate something, and so there was an obstruction.
Mhm.
It was our carpet padding. And long and the short of it is that we had asked for his financial help. I was also having some car problems, and so I was so scared that something major would happen and I'm on the way to the vet or something. And I thought, oh, I don't want 2 problems.
Oh.
So and now looking back, I wish I would have just went with the debt of just taking that on. But the long and the short of it is that his dad made the choice to not help until it was too late, and his cat died.
Mhm.
And that, I believe, will affect our son for a very long time because his dad made that choice to not step in when he should have, because he'd been sick, he'd been throwing up,
Mhm.
And we didn't know that he ate something at first.
Mhm.
Um, we just knew that he wasn't feeling well and that he wasn't eating like he would. Um, so that's another thing that I noticed that as a red flag is that there's always strings attached, whether you're a spouse, a girlfriend, or even a child of narcissist. I feel like that those are all things that dangle. They dangle like, come get the treat, you know? And so our kids, unfortunately, had to walk on eggshells. Was kind of the way people talk about,
Mhm.
you know, the emotional part of it. So it got so bad that when he would come home, the door would shut for the garage and we'd all scatter except for the youngest one. We would all like, oh no, dad's home. And we were just all scattered to our own little
Yeah.
areas because he just was not a nice person.
And that's no way to live.
No,
Oh,
no, and none of us felt special either.
what a
None of us.
shame. It's too bad he didn't, realize the way he was raised could affect his next generation, coming up. Too bad
Yeah,
he didn't see a counselor before he met you
yeah,
and got himself situated and
yeah.
knew what the problems were. Some people can do that. Some people are raised horribly and they
Mhm.
say, I'm not raising my kids that way. I'm
Well,
going to go see a counselor.
he may have had a good childhood in his brain,
Mhm.
that he, likes to talk about, but it sounded to me like his mother was the one that was the driving force, and
Mhm.
his dad would go to work, and his dad struggled with depression for a very long time.
Mhm.
And his mother just, in my opinion, um, didn't give the compassion that she should have given. But she was also in the age of like, you don't get a divorce. Like, that is like, you just don't do that. You just stick it out.
Mhm.
And instead of making your marriage better, um, you just deal with it.
Mhm.
And so it was very upsetting to know that he really didn't learn anything from any of that. He didn't learn anything from that. He didn't learn anything from seeing his own parents go through any of their struggles. Um, I mean, his mom stayed at home until his brother was in high school, is what he told me, and that then she worked, and until she could retire. And his dad was an accountant,
Mhm.
and so um, they're both educated. They both went to college, both his parents. Um, I just feel like his childhood didn't really, he didn't self reflect to know what he wanted to move forward in his own family.
Mhm.
He just said that um, he he wanted to be more involved as a dad, is what
Mhm.
he said. But then once they got to a certain age, um, yeah. So I always had to do the planning for the vacations. I had to always do the planning for any type of functions.
Mhm.
He was not close to his family at all.
Mm.
That's what I noticed. And that we always had to do things with my family.
Now, was that also when you were dating that you noticed this as well?
Yeah, but I felt like there was a facade there during
Mhm.
the dating process because even though he wasn't close to his sister, we saw his sister way more. And then when she got married to her second husband, then we really didn't see her a whole lot. And so my kids have cousins that the two oldest kids of mine, they have cousins that are almost the same age, and they're not close to him at all. Not at all. He had one brother and one sister. The brother died in 2011, and the sister is, um, she has the two kids that are our age, and then she had an older child. And my ex-husband, he had a daughter from somebody else. When she turned 18, she opted to get adopted by her aunt and uncle that she went to live with when she was 16. Um, and her mom died. And so it was very difficult. So I was a stepmom from day one. Um, there was different signs that I saw during the dating process of him being a single parent that I just didn't notice,
Mm.
like how his ex-girlfriend would act around him, how his parents would try to take over parenting. Um,
Mm.
they just assumed that he was incapable of being a parent. And I would point out the fact that, hello, like you're her parent. And it was just very upsetting at the time because I didn't understand the dynamics of it.
Hmm.
So, for instance, like when we were first dating, like his parents had a key to his house. They
Hmm.
wouldn't call ahead of time, they would just open the door. And I thought, what in the world? This can't be normal.
Uh-uh.
Like, why wouldn't you call or why wouldn't you knock on the door?
Hmm. Hmm.
They would just open the door. And I was like, what is going on here? So then I told him, I said, well, there's no way I'm going to stay here with you if this is how these things work.
Right.
And so I had opted to just give my opinion about things. And it was very difficult because I felt like the boundaries that should have been set up from day one,
Hmm.
there was none. There was none.
You are a wealth of information on these red flags.
I
Ah,
did a lot of studying and a lot of self-reflection because I really don't want to get into another relationship that's even remotely like that one.
oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean, I would be so leery of even getting involved with anyone at all.
Hmm. So now I do a lot of almost like a counselor, but it's almost like a counselor slash application now when you start dating because it's like, you almost want to question like every move they make, and it's not to be in a not trusting manner, but it literally is just with the fact that you're just wanting to know where they're coming from. Like, what are your intentions? You know?
Like, I wish I would have asked or delved deeper into the childhood, like how were you raised, things like that. I wish, um, because I think I would have stopped right there. You know, just odd things that make you question um sociopathy.
Hmm. Yeah, or even just the emotional intelligence.
Right.
Because I feel like when they know that, and I didn't even realize that that was even a thing because when I went through my counseling and my therapy, because I did both actually, because with my teenagers and stuff like that, I went through counseling with them. And so it was a whole like different uh, monster.
Yeah.
So when I went through the therapy for myself, and it was just individual therapy, um, I went through all of that with um, not knowing um, every little thing. I just kind of knew bits and pieces, and I was putting the puzzle pieces together,
Hmm.
or I was getting a confirmation of, okay, yes, that was what you thought it was, or okay, no, that's, you know what I mean? Like I would get the clarification of kind of my mysteries in my head, so to speak. And so it was more of a when I went through therapy, I found out that not everybody thinks like me,
Hmm.
and that some people take longer to get to the answer, shall we say,
Hmm.
or the aha moments. And so that was one thing that I noticed was that um, I feel like maybe some people could have did 2, 3, 4, 5 years of therapy, but I felt like I didn't really need it as long because as soon as I got that validation of this, and this, and this, and this, I felt like the rest of it I could just talk to friends about.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying that professionals don't know what they're talking about. That's not what I'm saying. I just felt like for me, I didn't feel like I was needing it that long,
Mhm.
just because I kind of got the gist of kind of what I was dealing with. And I think unless they have personal experience, um, a lot of them are not versed in narcissists.
Right.
They they,
Right.
they can't give you advice or any type of direction um, without that personal knowledge. I feel like, which I think for a therapist is very important.
Mhm. Yeah. In fact, there's 2 books out there. One is, You're Not Crazy
Mhm.
by Dr. Steinberg, and the other one was,
Mhm.
published, by Bailey Smith, Married to an Illusion.
Mm.
And that talks again, both of them about these, personality disorders of, I know everyone's throwing around the term narcissism, but there are different types of narcissists out there.
Yeah.
And I'd love to have you come back onto my podcast again and
Thank you.
chat more. If there's any advice you would give anyone dating right now, what would you tell them as I put
I
you on
would
the
tell
spot?
them, well, I'd say two things that would be helpful just from my own experience is that go with your gut. Always, always, always go with your gut. Because the worst thing that can happen is that you make a decision and then you have to, you know, decide. So um, the second thing I would say is that um, definitely run your questions through your friends and be like, okay, this is my situation, and this is how he reacted, or this is what happened, and then they will say, okay, yeah, that's no, 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 no. Because if you can catch it early on, then you can self-reflect and say, you know what, I'm more important, I am worthy, and I do deserve respect and love and compassion.
Mhm.
And I
That's
also learned that when they blame you for something, that's when they're doing something. And so those are like, I guess that's three things. I guess.
that's
Sorry.
fine. No, you're fine.
You know?
Yeah, it's the blaming. I totally get it. Been there, done that.
hmm
Um, how can people reach you if they have any questions? How do you want them to come through me and I can give
I'm on Facebook.
okay.
I'm on TikTok. I think I'm also on oh goodness. Let's see. I'm on TikTok. I can't remember what my
In
username is. I'm gonna
oh,
look it up real quick.
Instagram?
Because I feel like at the end of the day, all us women need to support each other.
Yeah.
And I feel like, not saying that there isn't men that haven't gone through this, but I definitely feel like there's probably a higher percentage of women, because men, they just look over it, oh, they're just being over dramatic, and those
Mhm.
women don't know what they're talking about. So that I feel like is very helpful. I'm at Mystery Mom 3, or I'm blonde, Missy Blonde Mom on Snapchat. Um, and that's just my first and last name for Facebook. So
Okay.
thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah. Hey, don't jump off though, okay? All right. So Slam the Gavel's a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I am your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth, and recently released Raised by These Wolves, How Family and Federal Courts Are Failing Our Children. Please join us again here with Melissa Vagle in the future and other exciting guests. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube, Apple iTunes, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, and feel free to buy me a coffee to help support this podcast. Thank you so much, Melissa, and we will chat again.
Thank you.